Why we need Aragorn's example of masculinity by Master Samwise. Look, I always talk about how I don't get to talk about Lord of the Rings, so therefore, I'm going to get to talk about Lord of the Rings in its own dedicated video, as well as Aragorn's example of masculinity. I've watched Master Samwise's videos before. I think we've reacted to him before. He does put out some pretty good work, and I think this is the other half of, like, Shoe on Head, Male Loneliness Epidemic, right? This is kind of the other half of that. So, without further ado.
The hands of the king are the hands of a healer, and so shall the rightful king be known. This single sentence sums up so much of what makes Aragorn an incredible leader, king, and man. Masculinity is one of the most misunderstood concepts in current thought, whether in news media, fiction, or influencer culture. The rejection of
Bro, I hate alpha males so much, dude. I hate all that red pill nonsense. Oh, definitely gets my blood boiling.
Many traditional masculine values and the suggestion that seeking them is toxic, commonly perpetrated by large news outlets or just some random blog, has generated a knee-jerk reaction that does nearly the same amount of harm.
So here's an interesting thought, right? And like obviously, so here's the thing, like this there's supposed to be interplay, right? And there's supposed to be, like, you know, people should be open to criticism, people should open to be critiques, right? You know, people should be, you know, receptive to feedback, right? And using some sort of status, using some sort of, you know, characteristic as a catch-all is generally seen as pretty bad, right? In pretty bad faith, right? So we talk about, you know, why should a man, if I was an woman, right? Imagine my waifu model here, if you will. You know, why should a man dictate what I should do, right? And, you know, society gets pretty on board with that, right? You know what? Sure, totally makes sense. You know what? Long as what you're doing is safe, long as what you're doing is, you know, you've made the decision to do it, it's not illegal, sure, go for it, right? At the end of the day, it is your body. Why is it when the roles are reversed, and I do bring up the Unsubscribed podcast, because Eli, I think, summed it up best, right? If you have a statement and you change one part about the statement, and suddenly it's a problem, maybe the statement itself is problematic. So why is it that we have a lot of women saying that, well, if you're a man, you should do this, or if you're a man, you know, you're doing this wrong, and being a man is like this one, right? Why traditional masculinity remains a barrier for all of us, right? For the author of For the Love of Men, From Toxic to More Mindful Masculinity, tells Mika Brzezinski how men can apply lessons of feminism to defeat their own gender stereotypes. Sure, like, go for it. Like, if the purpose is to reflect on what could potentially be problematic behaviors, like, I understand that. What if the roles were reversed? How absolutely cratered would the metrics and backlash of that argument be, right? If the roles were reversed. If it was a dude trying to say that, you know, women can overcome gender norms by taking, you know, examples from traditional masculine roles in fiction, right? Can you imagine the backlash? I think that's a pretty unfair double standard. I think that kind of frustrates everyone, and thus you lead into certain logic trains, right? You lead into, well, you know, it's just a woman trying to tell me as a man what to do, or it's just a man trying to tell me as a woman what to do, right? And thus we start talking past each other because it becomes a very broad talking point. You're dealing with a collective rather than dealing with individuals who are choosing to be problematic. I would argue that is, at face value, that article, I would honestly say that's problematic at face value without reading it. I personally would not read that.
Reaction that does nearly the same amount of harm. There is no shortage of voices telling young men that they should seek personal success and wealth at all costs.
Because Andrew Tate is such a reliable source as a dude. He's such a role model. That's sarcasm if you can't tell.
That being a superstar is what men should pursue. These calls are attempting to drown out the opposing cries for men to reject their desire for greatness, to be meek, weak, and gentle. As is all too common in today's political climate, both sides' viewpoints are overreactions to what they dislike about the opposing perspective, and neither outlook has it all right or all wrong. True, virtuous masculinity lies somewhere in the middle between the commonly espoused extremes, in the golden mean between vices. This is the brand of authentic masculinity demonstrated by Aragorn, son of Arathorn, king of Gondor, and his example is one we don't deserve but absolutely need right now. Aragorn is, first and foremost, a protector. That is what both a king and a healer are. someone who cares for and defends the lives entrusted to him. One might be tempted to think that being a king is desirable for the power wielded by the monarch, for the status and comfort that come with royal office. That is a flawed, selfish outlook that Aragorn does not embrace. We know this due to the manner in which he ascends to the throne of Gondor. Due to his royal lineage being the only living heir of Elendil, Aragorn could have walked into Minas Tirith and claimed the throne at any point, but he did not. Rather than seeking power, Aragorn sought his duty, which was to protect those who could not protect themselves. His long years in the north of Middle-earth were spent safeguarding the lands there, such as the Shire, from the many evil forces that still dwelt nearby.
I think it's interesting to note that, he could have by birthright showed up and said, "Hi, the thing, right? I'm taking this now." I think there's also a commentary here about those who are most deserving of leadership don't actually want the leadership role. They have other things that they want to do, other things they intend to do. And I've always thought about, because technically Gondor and Arnor were kind of split, right? Because Sons of Elendil, right? You had Arnor in the north, Gondor in the south, and Aragorn is descendant from Arnor lineage, which technically traces its way back to Elendil. So it's I don't know. It's weird to think about. It's one of those that I could have totally seen some interplay during Aragorn's reign of, people saying Aragorn isn't the like some kind of niche rebellious faction, saying that he just has no authority because he's from he has right over Arnor, not Gondor, right? But that's interplay in setting. And at the end of the day, he is still descended from Elendil. He is still descended from Numenorians. So I don't know. That's an interesting one to consider, and that's one that I could probably spend the next 20 minutes talking about, which I won't. But yeah, there's a commentary there as well. You don't necessarily want to be thrust into leadership positions, and sometimes leadership positions are kind of hey, you're kind of the best person to do this, and thus take up charge. And it also is, and it can conflict with what you want to do personally.
When he encounters the hobbits in Bree, Aragorn takes it upon himself to protect them from all enemies, and continues that commitment throughout their journey until assured by Gandalf that the hobbits are in safe hands. Upon reaching Edoras, Aragorn readily joins with the forces of Rohan in their fight against Isengard. And finally, Aragorn and his company provide the decisive blow in the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, relieving the siege of Minas Tirith. Upon reaching the White City, having won a glorious saving victory just outside its walls, what does Aragorn do? Does he ride through the streets, displaying the banner of Elendil, proclaiming himself King of Gondor? No. He senses that such an entrance would cause unrest, argument, and strife in a city so long without a king. I will not enter in, nor make any claim, until it be seen whether we or Mordor shall prevail. Aragorn has no interest in seizing power, authority, and status. Acknowledging that there is still much to do, still battles to be fought in defense of the land entrusted to his care, he declines to distract both himself and the current leaders of Gondor by causing political confusion. He still has a job to do. He has a country to protect. That is his kingly duty, which he will carry out whether or not he wears a crown. However, Aragorn does, at Gandalf's insistence, enter Minas Tirith, not so he can claim the throne, but rather because he is needed in the Houses of Healing, where Faramir, Éowyn, and Merry all lie stricken with wounds beyond the skill of normal healers.
And so, obviously here we can see, yes, there's still work to be done, right? You can't rest on your laurels. You have to, there is work to be done, right? Gonna go do the work, but also being receptive and open to that feedback of, you are most needed here. Yes, you have reservations about this, and that's fine to have reservations about this. And we're not saying to go in and do the thing, but you're still going in and helping out where you're needed. And I think having that ability to receive feedback and ability to receive, criticism, critique, being open to wisdom from others, I think is a very important skill, not just for men, but just for people in general. And thus you see when, a person like Andrew Tate is popular because at minimum, he talks to people. He talks to men, right? He talks to men where so often it feels like men are kind of just cool, you're here to fight wars for me. With the Shoe on Head video we went over, right? Something about some news anchor saying that, I want a man to be there. I want him to be strong. I also want him to be, emotionally available in case I need something. I want him to go off and fight wars for me. And it's I don't know how to tell you this, but women have served in the armed forces too. Sure, there's non-combat roles, but there are women who can go into the military. Arguably, in terms of draft, I mean, do they meet standards? Have standards been lowered? Especially if standards haven't been lowered. Cool, you're in the military now, right? That's equality. We all can work together, and thus then you'll get pushback in regards to that. And that's a whole different conversation entirely in regards to the military and draft, right? But like, being receptive to feedback goes away when the feedback you're getting, all the feedback you're getting, and all of the just when you do something, and all you get is either negativity, you're not doing enough, all my problems are because of men, men should be doing more. Like, what is it? Men should be pursuing more. And then you look at it was a TikTok somebody had uploaded. I don't remember what it was. But it was one of those things where like she's like, why aren't men approaching me? And I'm like, I mean, with specifically your top, your sweat jacket tied around your waist, baggy clothes, to me, this is someone who doesn't want to be talked to. Facial features, the way you're walking, expression, all of this tells me this is someone I should not interact with. And I think a lot of men are conditioned to not. Why would you approach? Because if you approach, you're just going to get called a creep. You're just going to approach and you're going to get, wow, this guy's a loser, and I can't believe the gym thing, right? Oh, he's so feral, and trying to effectively craft and fraudulently create a narrative that doesn't exist there. And yeah, I think that creator and a lot of those creators did get a lot of blowback, but it's why personally I don't feel comfortable at gyms. I don't know who's filming in the locker room. I don't know who's filming me without my consent, trying to craft this knowledge of me trying to sneak looks, right? Like, why would I subject myself? Why would a lot of men subject ourselves to that? That's not, and there are valid reasons. There are valid reasons why women will go to their cars at night after work, after a night out, and they'll have keys between their fingers. Right? I'm not saying concerns are unfounded. Coming from as reasonable, middle of the road perspective as I physically can, there are issues across the aisle here, right? And it seems there's a lot of hypocrisy going on, where men need to change, men need to go off to war, men need to do this, men need to be more receptive, men need to be less available, but also simultaneously more available when it benefits someone else. And the same is not said or expected of women. And that's not trying to iron fist, we should be treating these, women as such, right? Oh, excuse me. Sorry, allergies. But it's like, let's be fair and let's be reasonable. And people have kind of lost the ability to be reasonable. Go like movie theaters nowadays in 2025. I haven't been, but I've seen a lot of clips, TikToks, etc., where people are just chatting in there, or they'll chicken jockey during the Minecraft movie and bring an actual chicken into the theater, right? And it's like, that's a small slice of people just becoming more and more unreasonable. I don't think it's any sort of weird ideology. It's not because the alphabet mafia. It's not because of, a degradation of society. Well, in a specific part of it is. It has to do with the social contract and social etiquette kind of being torn to shreds and people trying to impose themselves on others. And that's across the aisle, right? Where you have women who are trying to impose some weird, you're there, you're an object. You're there to work for me. You're there to go off to war for me. You're done, right? Like that's what I need you. It's a very necessity-based thing, right? But you also have men who, have imposed themselves physically or try to get away with some weird, stupid stuff. And these things happen across the spectrum. I understand that there's interplay here. I understand that there's points of breakage point. It's very... lot of content to go over in such a small amount of time, right? So the degradation of society, the tearing to shreds of the social contract and social etiquette has less to do with emerging, gender politics, how one identifies, who one's attracted to, and it has more to do with just people don't know how to talk. People don't know how to communicate with each other. And that's honestly why I do not vibe with modern dating culture, as the kids would say. Maybe the kids would say, because people will say they're open to communication, they're open to talking, they want to talk about things, but as soon as things get rough, they don't talk about things. They clam up. And that's people being people, right? But I would argue that's not being an adult. I would argue that that is very much doing the opposite, not working through problems as they present itself, instead clamming up, putting up walls and, I don't want to deal with the situation. So that, yeah, more or less words, the issues with society come down to communication.
Their encounters with the Nazgul keeping their minds from healing even as their bodies begin to mend. To this point in the story, Aragorn's role has largely been one of a warrior. He defends those entrusted to him, yes, but mostly through violence. Even though he was able to care for Frodo after the Hobbit was stabbed on Weathertop, Aragorn's lesser skill and the intensity of the wound precluded him from being able to fully heal Frodo. Not so now.
To be fair, Morgul knife.
It isn't entirely clear whether Aragorn is now able to heal the 3 stricken warriors due to him coming into his own, the relatively lesser wounds they suffered, or a combination of both those factors. What is clear is that Aragorn's mission of protection extends beyond war. The ability to be aggressive and violent when needed is necessary and good for those who would defend their friends and country. But the capacity for gentle care must also be present if one is to express full, authentic masculinity.
And this comes down to being a balanced person, right? Like, this is, I think, what people are trying to get at. So when you have, I don't know, lady news anchor who's trying to say, I want a man to be, kind of distant, but emotionally there for me when I need him, and he should go off to war and fight the wars I need him to, right? It's like, I feel like they're trying to allude to this. They're trying to grapple with the concept of being firm, being, as we would say, strong, right? Strong when it is relevant, obvious. But at that point, you're still playing into gender roles, right? When needed, and then also be able to have that other side, to know when to not be, brazen, brash, overconfident, being able to have to fight, right? Not that those are all mutually exclusive to each other. It's a hard one to grapple with, because I feel that people have the understanding of what they want to say, but they don't know how to say it or how to rationalize it. So thus they say things, and then that gets them into further trouble because they don't know how to understand and rationalize what they're talking about.
Aragorn became known to the people of Minas Tirith as their king, not only because he arrived to turn the tide of battle in Gondor's favor, unfurling the banner of Elendil and thus striking panic and despair into the hearts of his foes, but also, and more importantly, because he could heal the wounds of war, the worst of injuries that no other man or woman could mend. And soon the word had gone out from the house that the king was indeed come among them, and after war he brought healing. In so tenderly caring for those who needed him most, Aragorn demonstrates perhaps the most crucial point of why his example of masculinity is so needed today. His strengths and abilities are not for himself, but for others. Aragorn spent many years, he's 87 during the War of the Ring, training in warfare, becoming an expert swordsman and unparalleled warrior. The kind of dedication needed to attain such heights of skill is arguably the most necessary trait for those seeking to become proficient in any discipline. Indeed, if you listen to just about any currently popular speaker on masculinity, they will repeatedly drive home the idea that discipline trumps motivation every time. And they are correct. For example, you cannot attain the strength you desire if you only go to the gym when you feel like going. You set a schedule and you maintain the discipline to stick to it. What the influencers who espouse this idea often fail to recognize, or at least do not state outright, is that without a purpose, such training is only building up your own vanity. Desiring and working towards strength is a good thing, but are we doing it so we can physically care for and protect our loved ones? To stay fit and healthy and thus not be a burden on others, or because we want women to be impressed by our pecs?
It's absolutely correct. He's absolutely correct here. It comes down to, what is your reason to fight? Is it going to be a superficial reason that, I want to get fit because I want to, attract people, right? Like what is the end goal here? Do you want to do it to be healthier? Do you want to do it for actual relevant reasons or superficial reasons, right? Because here's the thing about superficial reasons. Let's use exercise as the example, right? How many people get fit, whether, men, women, non-binary, or whatever, right? How many people will get fit just to find a partner? And once they find that partner, then their discipline starts to slip, because why should they keep it up, right? I'm sure that there's a non-zero amount of people. I'm sure there's quite many situations in which this has happened, right? Is that not a superficial reason to do so, right? Someone like me, personally, I enjoy combat. I enjoy sparring in SCA. I actually had a Saberforged saber shipped to my house today, which I'm waiting on the battery to charge on it, and then I'm gonna have to actually look at it because I want to see how it actually looks. When it glows, but like, I mean, these are things that I would love to do. The issue I run into personally is that I have to do so much stuff in isolation as is because of what I do for work, right? Like, I can't necessarily do this while hanging out with friends, right? I can't do this when, going out to dinner or something. Like, I am, for all intents and purposes, working a job, right? Without coworkers around me, right? So that is a barrier to a lot of things. So, I do this, but then I have to, go out and I have to practice for sparring alone, and I have to go hike the rock for exercise alone. And it's like, and then you start sacrificing things because it's like, you need to be that well-rounded person. Like, people are very social creatures. At a certain point, they have to have communication. If they don't have communication, they kind of fall apart. So part of that is also balance as well, right? So when it comes down to, me wanting to do things for the love of it, right? Absolutely. I can tell you my barrier specifically is that I have to do so much alone that I have to start compromising things to be able to at least get some socializing in, right? That's just my specific scenario, right? Where someone else could just, they love doing it because it's what they do, and they're able to do it for work as well. They're able to kind of weave in that exercise into what they do, and thus they don't really have a problem doing it, right? And each of us are going to have our own personal challenges. It is about finding that compromise, finding that middle ground, right? Like we said earlier, finding the middle ground between being this war fighter and finding this middle ground between being this, person who knows when to be soft and gentle when needed to be, right? Not saying you have to like be squarely in the middle all the time, but be able to weave back and forth between those.
Nothing wrong with wanting to be attractive, of course, but that is not by itself a healthy reason to seek strength. That is because your strength is not for yourself. It is for others. Physical power is important for masculinity, yes, but that is because it allows us to better protect those whom we love. And carrying out that duty is one of, if not the, central aspect of a man's job. As long as there have been wars, it has been largely the role of the man, sadly often the young man, to defend his nation, his people. If something goes bump in the night, what kind of man stays in bed while his wife goes to investigate? When the Christ child was in danger, it was Saint Joseph who was entrusted with the mission to bring the Holy Family to safety.
I'm going to be honest, I haven't read the book. I don't have a reference point for that one.
By nature, men are granted a larger frame, denser bones, and more muscle mass than are women. And with those physical advantages comes a duty that cannot be denied without denying the very essence of what it means to be a man in relationship with others.
So this is what chat was trying to get at earlier, where on average men are better at certain things and then women are better at other things as well. And it depends. So this argument can get skewed very quickly, right? I think like chat was having it, trying to picture it in a good faith light. It was probably trying to picture it in like, yeah, you'll have men who are on average taller and more broad-shouldered and have more strength. So men can be better at lifting stuff and maybe, the art of war and stuff like that. But like, that's on average. Like we still have with current fitness standards, or even without Nerf fitness standards, right? You still have women who are able to make it into the Marine Corps. You still have women who are able to make it into combat roles and do everything that's required of them. So to me, it's always been silly to like if don't nerf the entrance requirements. If women can meet the entrance requirements and they want to serve, let them serve. Like, what's the problem here? Oh, well, it's because women can make babies. What a weird, superficial evolutionary biology way to look at that. What a very binary way to look at life, right? Like, there are men who are going to be more frail than women. There are women who are going to be more frail than men. Like, and I have the more individualist perspective, if that makes sense, where it's very case by case dependent. If we do look at it from a standardized, on average, physiological situation, right? Like, yeah, I guess you can argue, yeah, men on average are larger and stronger than women. Sure. on average, women are not as large as men. Women are not as strong as men. But it's ultimately about how you use that strength, right? Because, I mean, by that logic, I should lose every single sword fight duel I'm in just because my opponent's larger and has reach on me. Okay, my opponent's 6'3" and has a sword that's at least 6 inches longer than mine, right? Like I have a long sword. He's got, like, I don't know, like a 50-inch blade or something like that, right? He should win every single round because he's larger than me. Or do you understand what your strengths are, and do you play to your strengths, right? I need you to move this box, right? Sure, a dude can say, cool, I'm going to pick this up and move it. I need you to move this box, right? A woman in the same role might be able to find an alternative way of doing the same thing without physically lifting the box, right? Whether it's pushing the box, whether it's, using something to help lift the box, right? Getting like a dolly or something like that, right? It's playing to our strengths, right? Like, sure, factory out of the box, right? Sure, men can be stronger, women cannot be stronger. How do you use your strength? What do you do with what you're given? And I think that's what a lot of people forget in this specific argument.
Indeed, embracing full, authentic, virtuous masculinity requires one to be in relationship. Not in a relationship, mind you. I'm not saying you can't be manly if you don't have a wife or girlfriend. But human beings do not exist alone. We were not made for ourselves, but rather for each other. As already stated, Aragorn clearly knows this. He seeks the company of those who need him and bonds with them as they journey throughout Middle-earth. We witness his fierce protective love for the hobbits as he chooses to pursue a whole company of Uruk-hai to rescue Merry and Pippin from their cruel captors. In those same scenes, we see his capacity for leadership, as he takes it upon himself to lead the hunt, but also relies on his companions when they are more capable than he. At Helm's Deep, Aragorn gently encourages a boy thrust into combat far ahead of his time, facing nearly certain death.
And that's the thing. This whole scene, right? That whole scene with him handing the sword off to the child, right? How would that be handled under Andrew Tate logic? How would that be handled in modernity? Well, I gotta go man up, boy. Really? Really? And that's where even people who will proclaim themselves as masculine and we are men and we are, alpha males, that's where they will fail every time, because they try to dive into this masculinity thing, but they don't understand all aspects of it, right? It's like, how do I word it? Gratz, you're playing a video game and you have an array of weapons. You have a pistol, you have a shotgun, you have a rifle, right? You have an assortment of weapons, right? Nah, you're just going to use the shotgun throughout the entire playthrough. Well, wouldn't it make sense to, use the rifle to shoot the dude at range? No, I don't think you understand. My 12 gauge. Is there not a better tool for the situation? Is there not a better way to approach that situation using other aspects of being a man? Like, look at Disney's Mulan, old Mulan, not new Mulan. I haven't seen new Mulan. I heard that actually really kind of like shat on the premise of Mulan. Look at old Mulan, right? What is the most iconic part about the movie that a lot of people remember? Let's get down to business. I'm awful at singing, right? The whole sequence about being a man, right? Must be swift as a coursing river, right? Must be fierce as a great typhoon, or whatever the line is, right? How much can you pull from that? If you listen to that and you pull nothing out of that, you are doomed to fail. You are doomed to fail if you are trying to be a man. However, if you can listen to that and you can pull logic and wisdom and inspiration from that, yeah, you're gonna go far, because you inherently key in on the message it's trying to get across, right? And that being said, you don't have to be some kind of fighter, right? You don't have to be military. You don't have to be, John Trucker or warehouse worker who can haul and throw, 80 pounds plus at a time, right? Definitely no more than OSHA regulations would allow for, because that never happens. You never have to pick up more than OSHA would allow. Never. No, sir. But like, that understanding, I feel, is lost on a lot of people.
I shall die as one of them.
Not with them, but rather as one of them. The men of Rohan around Aragorn are not just any men. They are, as he says at the Black Gate,
My brothers!
Does he know them personally? No, but he is in relationship with them. He has formed a bond through their common struggle and enemy. Their mission is not divorced from his. He does not hold his own life more dearly than that of any of those standing on the wall with him. That kind of brotherhood, the type that can only be forged in the fires of combat and staring death in the face, is what makes it possible for men to do great deeds on the battlefield.
I mean, you could argue this is also trauma bonding too. I mean, as far as I understand it, on authority, the military does do a lot of this. This is also why, and I will stress this, because I don't ever want to see another person accusing me of stolen valor. I'm not military. I have never been military. I will never be military, right? Barring some weird draft thing, right? Like, and even then, right? We'll get to that in a minute, right? Like, I can't do the whole Marine Corps snake thing, right? I can't have Calf Scout grog and whatever other branches have their own, rituals and stuff, right? I haven't earned that. And that's fine to not earn that. It's understanding that this is why this happens. These people went to boot camp and basic training together. These people, they served together. They worked with each other. Blood, sweat, tears, right? Absolutely. They deserve to share in that shared struggle. Absolutely. They deserve the benefits of that. And even then, there will be a division. Let's say, hypothetically, draft happened tomorrow. There will absolutely be a split between people who are already military and people who are draftees. There will absolutely be a rift between those two. The draftees will never be accepted. And that's just understanding. That's just how that works. So this is one of those where I think even outside of that, right? I think this is why a lot of men can benefit from rivalry. Think like Naruto logic. I explained this recently, how I operate on Naruto logic for a lot of things, where I'll look at something and say, that I want to do that, or I want to compete with that, right? That I want to be a better tank in an MMO than that person, right? And it's not that I have any attachment to the person, not that I'm, affiliated, with the person in any way, shape, or form, right? It's that I'm able to pick that and effectively declare them as rival, gain rival keyword, and improve myself to get to that point, to motivate myself to get better and able to compete on that level, right? And I think is that not what the concept of a rival is, at least in some capacity? And I think a lot of men could really use that. And honestly, women and non-binary people too. I think using it in a healthy way could be a very good way to motivate people.
They may fight for king, country, and cause, yes, but more importantly, they fight for each other. Aragorn reminds us of this fact just moments before the final desperate battle against the innumerable orcs of Mordor.
A day may come when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship.
The downfall of man will not come solely because of the strength of their enemies, but because men forget why they stand their ground against impossible odds, because they lose sight of how vital the bonds of brotherhood are. In saying this, Aragorn reminds us of the necessity of magnanimity, that is, the desire for greatness, but not for one's own sake. Men should strive to do great things. Even if we lead simple, ordinary lives, we should endeavor to be great husbands and fathers, to excel at our line of work, to become the best versions of ourselves that we can be. However, whatever greatness we achieve should not be for our own sake, our own vanity, but for the sake of our loved ones. The longest study on happiness conducted by Harvard found that close relationships, more than money or fame, are what keep people happy throughout their lives. What is the use of a high-paying job that allows us to buy whatever we want if we have forsaken meaningful personal relationships to achieve that level of success?
We went over just this exact thing in the reaction to Ren Money Ties. Being rich is not necessarily that you have the most gold or the most money or the most physical assets, right? You can be, yes, monetarily rich, but does that make you rich as a person? Does that make you fulfilled and happy in your life? Probably not, right? Probably not. That's a pretty sad existence, pretty pitiful existence, right? Building each other up. I talk about this constantly, right? It's why I'm so harsh. It is 2025. There is zero excuse for people to still be breaking the 4 basic rules of firearm safety. We have plenty of YouTube videos. We have plenty of education materials. You can Google right now, right? Let's do this. 2-second Google test. 4 basic, if I can spell, rules of firearms safety. Right here. AI overview. Actual site, like sources and citations, right? That'll literally tell you this. There is zero excuse for anyone to be stupid with a firearm ever again. Zero, none, zilch, right? It's why I will never see eye to eye with the firearm community, because we will fundamentally disagree on this. So how this relates is that people are so preoccupied anymore tearing each other down that we forget to build each other up. When somebody stumbles and makes a mistake, or, is a 1v4 in a game like Rainbow Six and they end up losing it, right? What's our first option? To berate them, to belittle them. Oh, you didn't try hard enough, right? Even though they were the last person alive. As somebody who's been the last person alive in, raids in Final Fantasy. Sure, I'm the tank, don't get me wrong, but like I've had to solo some weird stuff. It's just one of those things that like people, you also have to read the room. People build each other up, especially when they've proven they're worthy of being built up. Because there are people who you will reach out and try to help, and people who you will try to do something for, but they aren't motivated, or they just don't care enough, right? Like, if somebody wanted to sword fight, right, and learn like basic sword forms and stuff, like how do I not point this at myself, and how do I actually do this, right? Sure, okay, but if the person just wants to do it as a novelty and they're not taking it seriously, why should I teach them? If someone, because I've had to teach one person in my life, I've had to teach one person how to shoot a gun, right? I was watching them like a hawk. I was right over their shoulder. They did everything I told them to, right? If the person doesn't care, why would I subject that? First of all, dealing with the firearm specific, and even swords to a degree as well. That's a liability. If you're not in there, your head's not in the game, why should we build you up? Cool, get out of here. Go away, right? I want to deal with you. And that's kind of the general response, because at that point, that is dangerous if they're not on board with it. So when I say that people don't want to build each other's up anymore, it comes with the caveat that people have to be willing and to a degree deserving of being built up. So I'm of two opinions on that one.
Certainly, the two aren't mutually exclusive, but we only have so much time and energy to pour into the various pursuits of life.
Correct.
If we seek greatness that benefits only us, we fail, no matter how much material wealth and success we obtain. Aragorn's pursuit of greatness was never for his own vanity. If it was, he would have been on the throne of Gondor long before turning 87. Instead, he sought to become an expert swordsman, tracker, navigator, and healer in order to best serve those who would need him when the time came. One might characterize Aragorn's decision in that matter to be humility, and one would be correct, but perhaps not for the reason you might think. As I've mentioned before in previous videos, humility is not self-degradation, but rather an accurate recognition of your own strengths and weaknesses, and the ability to act accordingly. This
is where I actually toe the line between the two, because I say I'm pretty bad at games, and then when I actually can turn my brain off and actually focus, I'm actually not really that bad. So this is an example of me specifically, right? Like, I toe that line between actual humility of like, dude, I'm not a top 10 raider. I'm 100%. I'm not top 10% raider. But then I start like critiquing myself and getting myself down, trying to treat myself as a top 10% raider, right? If that makes sense, right? Going in Destiny, right? Going from Destiny, right? I've run King's Fall how many times? I've run Root of Nightmare how many times, right? Raid Report says I'm top 10%, right? I don't feel top 10%. Yeah, if I make a mistake, if I have a single wipe in Root of Nightmares, I feel that I've done something wrong. Even when it could have been someone else who, wasn't running planets correctly, right? Because then I'm like, well, realistically, if you're a high enough tier, you should be able to swap that. You should be able to make sure that you're covering for your team and stuff, right? Like, if your team is doing something wrong, you should be able to go there and fix it, even though that's not realistic or reasonable to expect of oneself. That's where you start towing the line between, oh, dude's being humble because, he's not trying to treat himself like some hotshot 1%. But also, he really kind of gets on his own case and gets in his own head, and he really just degrades himself. That is a prime example of this.
With true humility, isn't worried about self-image because he knows who he is. He knows his duty and his place in the world. To put it another way, humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less. Truly knowing your abilities and your duty allows you to think about others more than you think of yourself. As you might expect, Aragorn exemplifies humility throughout the story, but perhaps his most impactful display of this virtue comes after the Battle of Pelennor Fields has been won, and the men of the West must decide their course of action, not yet knowing the fate of Frodo and the ring. Aragorn understands that, as Éomer states,
"We cannot achieve victory through strength of arms,"
and yet leads the men of Gondor and Rohan to the Black Gate nonetheless. Aware that his forces are much depleted after the battle at Minas Tirith, Aragorn knows that he cannot defeat Sauron's armies head-on, And yet, that is exactly what he seemingly sets out to do. The Lord of Mordor sees the approach of the men, led by the standard of Elendil, and believes that the arrogance of the new king has led him to foolishly believe that what remains of Gondor's might can conquer the hordes of orcs still within Mordor. But Sauron miscalculated. Aragorn acknowledges his own relative weakness and inability to win the day, but he refuses to cower in the face of overwhelming odds. Rather,
it is important to understand as well that Aragorn never takes the ring. He actually chose not to take the ring, right? To let Frodo take it and go with Sam their own way. Because Aragorn, in taking the ring, would be a fundamentally different person, right? It's how do I word it? Because the ring corrupts, right? This is known, right? The ring corrupts, right? We even try to see the ring try to corrupt Sam when he has it for a brief segment in Minas Morgul. This is more so the movie specific. I guess, yeah, the movie specifically with Samwise the Strong, the animated Rankin and Bass one, but in the books mostly, where the ring showcases what Sam could be, wielding a flaming sword, running in the plastic lanes of Gorgoroth, right? The ring tries to corrupt him, tries to, give him visions of grandeur and that he himself could be more powerful, right? The only individual I think who could have taken the ring and overthrown Sauron, the ring choosing it as his new master, I think was Gandalf. But that's also explored. There's also a couple videos that actually go into that in depth a little bit. Aragorn taking the ring would be compromising his own morals.
He recognizes that he is not the hero of this story, but that he still has a role to play in these events that are determining the fate of the world. In doing so, he demonstrates a key principle of humility. Our circle of control and influence is small. There are many factors that affect us that are beyond our authority and ability to affect change. The idea that you are 100% in control of your life, that everything is your fault, is an absurd knee-jerk reaction to what some might call victimhood culture, a perpetuation of the harmful myth that many people are simply powerless victims of circumstance and the system. As usual, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. We can assert control, but only to a certain extent.
This is why I will say I can't control what other people do, right? With it reasonable take. I can control what I do, right? I can control how I respond. I can control myself and how I come out of a situation, right? And that is an important distinction. Like, it helps play into it. I was going to go off in a bit on that, but I think I've already made this a little too long.
We have to react to things beyond our control and peacefully accept those which we cannot change. It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose.
Yeah.
That is not a weakness. That is life. To this point in the story, Aragorn has made no significant mistakes. He has accomplished great things with the aid of the Fellowship, the Rohirrim, and the Grey Company. The decision to advance on the Black Gate was one made after careful consideration and wise counsel. Aragorn knows that it is possible his actions will have no effect on the outcome of the war, that he will fall in battle with all his men, that Frodo and the ring will be found, and that all of Middle-earth will be plunged into a second darkness. And it wouldn't be Aragorn's fault. He did all he could. He never accepted defeat, but rather faced it head-on, sword in hand and friends by his side. Can anything more be asked of any man?
No.
Aragorn's defining moment comes not as he wins the decisive battle for the good of the world, but rather as he prepares to lose one, so that maybe, just maybe, the world he leaves behind will remain beautiful and free. Why is all of this so important today? Now more
I love how we ended that section going into this of like, okay, we've talked about the thing. Why is this relevant?
more than ever, men are bombarded with two drastically differing viewpoints on how men should speak and act, with very little, if any, common ground between the two sides. Aragorn's example of masculinity shreds these false ideals, these absurd extremes, and shows us that yes, we should grow strong, we should succeed, we should strive for greatness, but not for ourselves. Aragorn is, as J.R.R. Tolkien put it in a letter from the trenches of World War I, a great instrument in God's hands, a mover, a doer, even an achiever of great things, a beginner at the very least of large things. Tolkien's idea of greatness as displayed by Aragorn could never be defined by obtaining material wealth or social status, but rather by doing one's duty, loving one's friends, and perhaps even laying down one's life for them. We may never know in this life the consequences of our actions, But if we strive to do great things with magnanimity, humility, and self-sacrificial love, we cannot fail. Ladies and gentlemen, we are made for each other. I cannot emphasize that point enough. We are made to be in relationship with one another, meant to do great things for the sake of those we love. To see this ideal embodied, look no further than Aragorn, son of Arathorn, Lord and King of Gondor. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.
I thought it was a good video. I thought it was great. I think this talks about a lot of the things that like Shuan had talks about, right? Where we talk about the male loneliness and epidemic, gender wars between men and women, right? And I think it recontextualizes it in a different way using a piece of, popular media, right, as a reference point. And I think there's a lot of good information in this. It's definitely one of those that I feel more people need to be talking about things like this. And I do like when people do talk about these kind of things. I think it's one of those that definitely is hard for a lot of people to grapple with. And even then, even through this video, right, there's going to be a number of breakage points, argument points. There's going to be a lot of points that people take disagreement with. And at the end of the day, come to your own educated conclusion. That's really all that matters, right? Especially because I've managed to 3x the length of this video. Definitely go and watch the original video. I thought this was put together very well. I thought this was a very good summary. I thought this was a very good recontextualization of information that a lot of us have really seen and been subject to. And at the end of the day, regardless if you're, man, woman, non-binary, whatever, right? Building each other up and communicating is a path to constructing something more, right? Constructing something that is more than just the sum of its parts. And I think there's something special about that. And I think that in a time period where we're so divided and we are so critical of not only others but ourselves, I think it's important to kind of go back, not necessarily to basics, right? But to really just take information and understand what we want out of life and where we want. If you want to go through life and you want to just hoard as much material wealth as possible and sequester yourself away, that is a choice that you're allowed to make. It probably won't be the best decision. It will most likely be a very hollow life, but that is a choice that you're meant to make. And that's the other important part, is there are choices. You can be an Andrew Tate alpha male red pill bro. You could do that. That is a choice you can do. There are consequences of the choices. You can absolutely look at someone like Aragorn in fiction, and you can understand lessons given. You can understand why he is an example of a good example of masculinity, and you can try your best to follow in his footsteps. There are consequences to that as well. Consequences being good, bad, and neutral. And it just comes down to what you want as a person, what you want to see out of life, and what you can control. Not because you can't control others, but you can control yourself, and make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Thought this was a really good video. Definitely go check out the original link in the description down below, and I will see you all in the next one.